The idea of an energy field or an aura surrounding the human body goes back many centuries. In biblical paintings, artists attempted to depict it by painting halos or aureolae encircling the heads of divine religious figures. Rather more recently, this NASA picture shows Apollo 12 astronaut Pete Conrad on the moon with a bluish glow around him. A leading American center of psychic research is the University of California at Los Angeles, where research psychologist Dr. Thelma Moss is experimenting with Kirlian photography, a revolutionary technique invented by Russian scientists Semyon and Valentina Kirlian, which captures on photographic plates the aura or energy field surrounding both organic and inorganic objects. Dr. Moss, could you tell us about your research here at UCLA?
We've conducted about almost every area of research in parapsychology that includes telepathy, thoughts going from mind to mind, moving objects at a distance. Primarily now, we're extremely interested in energy fields around the body. But probably the most fascinating work that we're doing right now has to do with a photographic technique that was first discovered in the Soviet Union called Kirlian photography, or more simply, electrical photography. And we've been able to get some pretty fascinating stuff on moving picture film using this technique, and I'd like to show it for you now, if I may. Okay, I'm going to turn on the film projector here, and we'll be taking a look at some of our work in motion pictures.
Due to the efforts of experimental researchers such as Dr. Moss, the technique of Kirlian photography may soon be of practical use in almost every area of physical science.
Inorganic objects photograph very differently from organic objects. Coins have a steady corona. We get the illusion that there is movement going around it, but the actual corona itself is static and its boundaries fixed, whereas human beings show a remarkably different effect. This is the right index finger pad, and we can see how brilliantly around his finger there are flares, and the corona keeps changing its pattern. We took a young lady and asked her if she'd get drunk. Here she is, 2 finger pads on her right hand before she's had anything to drink at all. And it is rather a placid effect. After 4 glasses of champagne, we see that she's become considerably brighter and the gaps have closed. And from the backs of her fingers are emitted sparks from time to time. After 8 glasses, she is in a much better state. From the rear projection of her finger pads, there are brilliant effects. Now we tried before and during kissing. This is the left and right, male and female, before kissing, and we can see that the coronas of both are rather dim, with a gap definitely existing between their fingers at the point where they are almost but not quite touching. These same subjects were photographed during a kiss. Their coronas have become considerably brighter and, in fact, are reaching out toward each other, perhaps the woman reaching out a bit more to the man than the man is toward the woman. Here we find an extraordinary example, which doesn't happen very often. Do you notice the red blob of light appearing between the 2 people? In anticipation, we like to think of the kiss to come. While kissing, the white and almost pink colors have become much more prominent, and it would seem the man on the left is perhaps enjoying the experience a little bit more than the person on the right.
Now, Dr. Moss has also observed through the Kirlian process the dynamic interchange of energy between a psychic healer and his patient. Apparently, after a healing treatment, there's a sizable increase in the width of the coronae surrounding the fingertips of the patient and a corresponding decrease in the healer's corona. Another fascinating aspect of Kirlian photography is known as the phantom leaf phenomenon. People who've had a limb amputated often say that they can still feel it, even complain of absent fingers or toes that itch. Now this, according to scientists, can be explained by the persistence of old sensory patterns in the brain. But for years, psychics have claimed that they can actually see phantom limbs still attached to the body. And now the Kirlian technique supports their claim. In Dr. Moss's laboratory, first they photographed an intact leaf, then cut away part of the leaf and photographed it again. For a short time, a phantom counterpart of pure energy remained where the leaf had been cut, making up a complete sparkling outline of the whole leaf.
One of the most dramatic things in Kirlian photography is the phantom leaf effect. Here is a leaf on the left side. It has been cut. We turn on the Kirlian equipment by placing an electrode, and here we see no phantom. Where the leaf has been cut, there is a kind of gap. However, by lifting up the electrode and replacing it very vividly, you can see the brilliance of the phantom effect. Extending beyond the boundary of the cut leaf, we can see flares coming out from various parts of the leaf and from its cut end. We cannot explain the effect. We simply know that it exists and that we can take it. About 30% of the time, we obtain this phantom effect.
Dr. Moss, have you investigated any other types of psychic phenomena?
Oh, I'm called on frequently. Psychotherapists sometimes bring their patients in because they've got some problems. One of the strangest areas of all is when we are called, I would say we get 100 calls a year, to find out about haunted houses. People think their houses are haunted. And we did one extraordinary investigation with interesting results of a haunted house here in Los Angeles for the American Society for Psychical Research.
Not far from UCLA is still another haunted house, inhabited by Mr. and Mrs. Robert Rice, their 5 children, and a ghost. Mr. Rice, when were you first aware that your house was haunted?
It was the holiday season of Christmas in 1969.
Did you see or hear something?
Well, it was more of a feeling than either sound or sight. It was one of these things that there was an extremely strong presence in the house, and I got up, I'd say it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and began to look around the house. I searched all the rooms expecting to find a burglar, but there was no one in the house, but a very, very strong presence.
Soon after this, Mr. and Mrs. Rice called in a psychic to find out if their house was indeed haunted. They were told that the ghost was that of a young architect who had become very disturbed and hanged himself upstairs in the attic bedroom.
Well, I was working in my studio downstairs. I'm a painter, and this individual had become such a familiar part of our family after a number of years that I more or less tried to communicate with him on working in this painting. I saw a man about 5'7", very thin, dark complected, wearing a white shirt rolled up to the sleeves, open collared dress shirt, dark pants, and black shoes. There was an immediate effect of the painting taking shape. It was almost as if it were directed, although I didn't move my hand. It's not really a painting of him as he looks, it's more of a feeling of his personality.
The California Society for Psychical Research came to the Rice's house to investigate the case.
And they went through the house and the different parts of the house, wherever they were, that they felt something, they would record that. They felt very strong feelings of him upstairs where he was supposed to have hung himself. There were unusual noises up and down the stairs, and it sounded like someone walking up and down the stairs. They also saw him in the same light and described him in the same manner that we had seen him.
Much of their conclusions concurred with what we had told them ourselves.
In view of the 5 children, there are absolutely no problems whatsoever. They're very aware of what's happened. It really doesn't bother them. They're used to the idea. We've never been afraid of him, and it's never bothered us living here, and we've been here for 5 years. Actually, we've kind of enjoyed having him as a silent member of the family.
Lucretia Black, and I am a witch. I practice witchcraft. I have always been a witch. I was born a witch, I was raised a witch, and my mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother were all witches.
What is a witch?
It's a psychic female who can project her energies and invade other people's subconscious minds, forcing them to do things they would not normally do. This is Witches' Mill in England, where in the Middle Ages, witches practiced their ancient art. There are witches who worship nature spirits and use plants and herbs to make potions for the sick. Witches who cast spells to dry up a neighbor's cow or blight his crop. Witches who wore charms and amulets to dispel the dark forces. In England, in medieval times, the church burned and hanged witches, blaming them when someone became sick or died. In France, Joan of Arc was burned at the stake because the church was afraid of her amazing psychic powers. Down through the ages, people with psychic ability have been falsely accused of being witches. And as recently as 1970, in San Jose, California, an ordinary Midwestern housewife was charged with practicing witchcraft.
For years, we have seen people lying on beds of nails or walking on sword blades, and we've thought it was magic or fakery. Now we're beginning to understand there is a thin line between magic and what we call mind over matter. And science has begun to study the people who perform these feats. Here in Hawaii, members of an ancient tribe walked barefoot through fiery coals without suffering pain or injury to their skin. All around the world, highly specialized rituals are performed that tug at the deepest, unreasoning levels of the human mind. In Brazil, voodoo cults still flourish. Ceremonies are enacted where voodoo priests invoke the spirits of the dead to take vengeance on the living. Animal sacrifices, chanting, beating drums incite the crowd to near hysteria. Questionable occult ceremonies are not limited to the more primitive areas of the world. In San Francisco, as in other American cities, Satan is alive and well. And to prove it, here, with the full cooperation of the men and women involved, is an actual celebration of the Black Mass.
In nomine Dei nostri, Satanas Luciferi excelsi. In the name of Satan, the ruler of earth, King of the world, open wide the gates of hell and come forth to greet me as your brother and friend. Grant me the indulgences of which I speak, for I live as the beasts of the field, rejoicing in the fleshly life. I favor the just and I curse the rotten. By all the gods of the pit, I command that these things of which I speak shall come to pass.
Blessed are the strong, for they shall possess the earth. Cursed are the weak, for they shall inherit the yoke. Blessed are the bold, for they shall be masters of the world. Cursed are the righteously humble, for they shall be trodden under cloven hoofs.
Command for us! Command for us! Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Some people still allow themselves to be seduced by the theatrics of dark and sterile practices. But most of us are reaching out to a new, exciting future.